Remember the Whitman crew?
Yeah.
This is a good story. Remember when the first time we met them, they were still in training, and they came. We met them on a fire, and they're still in their street clothes, because the Forest Service or somebody was going to buy all their equipment for them, and they hadn't done it yet, but they got called to the fire. They showed up in their street clothes. And they had helmets, but other than that, they worked for several days.
There was 5 crews when it went agency Hotshots on Region 6, in Region 6. And I'm just sitting here trying to think.
We were the third crew. There's Redmond was first, then Red River second, we were third, then
Yes.
Whitman.
And was there only
Mount-
And
five?
then Mount Baker, didn't Mount Baker?
Well, Mount Baker and Marvin. But I thought
When
it
did
was
Brineville come in?
later.
Yeah, that was later.
When we were preaching, when we were on the 70s, there was just 4 of them.
4 is all I
Four.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a center right up north of town here. It's called the Columbia Breaks Fire Interpretive Center, and it not only preserves fire history and fire management, but we also educate people about wildfire in college, and especially kids, middle school age and grade school. And it talks about the importance of fire in the Eastside environment, that it's needed, it's a part of it. If the forests are burning, it probably needs to burn. And we talked about, I don't know if you've seen the cat face burns, or the fire scars that show how often fire did burn. And then, because we were so successful in extinguishing fires, now our forests are overgrown. And we don't say there's one solution. We say this is the problem. Here are many solutions that are offered. And what do you do? So fire is very much a part of our environment, as much as a snake or a tree or a bush or anything else. It's here, always has been, always will be, and should be.
And fire in those days was publicly termed as a destroyer of the environment.
A disaster.
A disaster. When actually, through my career, that's how I started out, being hired on a pickup crew to go from here up into the mountains to fight a lightning fire. And that wasn't going to get away. The whole community came together to make sure that didn't happen. And then through my career, it went to fire ecology, when people finally realized that fire was a very essential part of the environment, and without it, things are going to change drastically and not to our liking. So, it's changed considerably. It's growing slowly, and I'm not sure we're able to keep up, because sooner or later it's going to happen. And we're kind of getting out of that. We're starting to use more fire in the environment. Back in the wilderness, the fires are left to go, and they should be. In fact, I worked on the first fire plan for this ranger district to do exactly that, but I don't think it ever got initiated. I think it was a forgotten archive.
But I think it's related to the ambivalence towards putting crews on fires aggressively too. I mean, why endanger a crew if it's as long as it's not burning houses? Let it burn. It needs to burn anyway. So I think that's changed.
That then becomes a problem of proper application.
And now I
Not
believe
a change in philosophy.
as management, they manage fires more than they fight fire now. And
Right.
exactly what you guys are talking about. If they see fire is doing actually good and it's a little tough to put people in, they'll just kind of observe and watch.
Well, that's kind of been exacerbated, though. There's no more harvesting that much or anything, so it kind of goes together. We let the fires go. We're not able to manage anything that much now. And they talk about all these fires taking off and going now. Well, they're really not natural fires in the fact the way they were when the fires were burning. So
Right.
we get these disastrous fires that kills everything. Where in the past, so just letting the fires burn now is, I don't think it's the way we got to go. But I don't think sometimes it's not as natural when you consider what it was 100 years ago.
And even getting it to prescribed burns and trying to get it to a natural state.
You gotta do
I
some
think there's
management
another
there.
thing we're not talking about very much right now, is even prescribed burns may be shut down because of air pollution, carbon, emissions in the air worldwide. I think, myself personally, I think thinning and then low intensity prescribed burns are in combination are the answer, but you can't.
But there's almost needs to be a site prep before some of these before you burn them to try to get it knocked down. But like up the icicle there was a big fire up there, and there was some 6 and 7, 8 foot pine up there that had cat faces on them, and they burnt a lot of times. Well, this fire, that it was in the early 2000s, and it burnt, and there was enough fuel and stuff that was underneath them, so the fire burnt there long enough that the trees caught on fire where they used to just flash through. And these trees fell over just like they were chainsawed. They fell across my trail, so I had to get some big saws up there to get them out because it was in, it was in the wilderness and they couldn't be harvested. But basically, it was because there was so much fuel loading there that it wasn't like in the historical fires.
From my perspective, and one of the things, being a recent retiree and seeing how things have evolved so much, and then dealing with the public, the campers, the recreationists, and they're all wondering why the woods are dying because of the bugs. Ranger Randy, what's happening? What's the Forest Service going to do? And you go back to Smokey the Bear, and one of the biggest challenges now the agency has is education. The Columbia Breaks is a huge heading down the right path to help educate the public on smoke. So smoke is good if we're doing it on our terms versus in August, where in the Wenatchee Valley, many years you can't breathe there. But if the public would say, some spring smoke coming out of the mountains, fall smoke, that's good, healthy smoke. But it's all, Chamber of Commerce, putting smoke in the air keeps the tourists away, which equals less revenues to the small business owners. But so it's just this huge educational thing that smoke is good if it's under the terms of the agency, as Chuck was trying to do in his day here of teaching us to burn. Is we got to teach the public that this is good and we have to do it, otherwise our grandchildren's grandchildren aren't going to see a whole lot of woods as we saw. It's changing immensely as we speak.
But I don't think burning in itself it's so big right now that burning is so expensive, and you need so much of it that it can't happen by itself. You got to make something commercially viable to bring people in to do it. Now, you have to bring the harvesting back, whether it be for logs or for biofuel. That's what I think a lot of it should go to. You've got to bring that commercial element back, or it isn't going to happen because the government doesn't have the money, or a lot of times the will to do it, or the time.
Well, like we
and
had
environmental laws.
over there in Leavenworth, we had where they were doing a lot of that stuff up at Devil's Gulch there, and they did a lot of it. But it was all on the pine stands and all the Doug fir north-facing slopes for owl circles and
Of course, some
spotted
of that,
owl stuff, and they couldn't do anything. They left that.
some of that, Rusty, is invasive species coming in too.
Yeah.
That's causing that change.
But I meant though, they went in and thinned the pine. They did some really nice work on the south-facing
Yeah.
slopes. But all the north-facing Doug fir was nothing. And that's where those fires just ran.
Right. That's the thing we don't accept in Douglas fir or true firs, is that it is fire tolerant, but you've got to find that level.
But it can't be overstocked with so much.
It can't be overstocked, that's true.
And then all that stuff is dying.
Because
of
the
computer.
fire study that we did, the fire scar study, I was going to ask you about that, John, where it's at. What's the story?
Still here.
We found that it wasn't just, we didn't find just ponderosa pine out there, we found Douglas fir. Douglas fir on south extreme slopes. Big ones, 4 and 5 feet through, that we could take the stump where they had harvested 20 years ago and get the fire scar off of that. Is it not only reads on the outside, but it reads all the way through.
It was getting the plus of having it burned periodically where it didn't have a
Yeah,
fuse
it
anymore.
was, and that's why the fire scar is there, because of the pitching. Once it's wounded, a rolling rock or whatever can start it, and then you've got a fire history that is an element of the ecology. Is called a disruptor. It's to take from sterile species back to primal. Most people don't realize that, including the public, and a lot of our agencies don't understand it.
So shot crews are pretty much doing the same. They have the same overall purpose. They just have a different emphasis, I guess.
Yeah, that's 2 weeks ago.
It's
I was
not
up at Preston Trick, and the crews were up there doing prescribed fire. And they surprised, "You're Chuck Wolf?"
Figured that too. It was Chuck.
Yeah, I know. I try to live it down.
What, they think you were old or what?
I guess
Yeah,
I'd
I
have
don't
to
understand
talk to Matt. But was it more exciting to be on crews during our day than it is today, or you think, or
It's all a different world. I mean, it's no different than any other crew in the agency. What was 30 plus years ago is different in everything. You know, our trail crews operate a whole lot differently than they did when Rusty first started doing it in 78 or 75 or whenever it was. We've all evolved, and there's more requirements, more, you know, how are you going to protect and, you know, protect your employees.
But I asked you and John, or Russ, you guys been, or Chuck, I mean, would you want to be on a crew today or a crew in the past? Would it make any difference?
I'll tell you what. When you're young, fire is fire, and it's exciting. I see it in eyes all the time. Of course, it's money involved. Many of us did it because we enjoyed it.
It's the same.
And I think it's the same as it is. You talk to any one of these hot shot guys, and they're in it because they get adrenaline rush and they like to work hard and dirty and
So
see
one thing
fire.
that-
And of course, the money.
So John, like, you talk to these guys on these crews now, and they've had so much training. It's phenomenal that a lot of those just crew members have a real understanding of what's going on. Like Preacher was talking about, we depended and we understood what was going on to a certain extent. But I mean, their training, to me, it's pretty impressive. The training and what they're doing, you know what I mean? And it's really
This facility,
I don't think
we
I could
worked
do
out of the
physical
back of a
training.
truck.
the one thing that I see when we go to these refreshers and stuff, and they would sit there and say, everybody has a right to speak up and say they're scared. And I agree, that's good, but there's a point where when you're on a crew and you got a crew out there and somebody says, especially hot shots, IR crews, they all work as a team. So you get 2 or 3 people, that just throws the crew boss and everything out of kilter, so your team falls apart. And I just find it interesting, you know, you want to say, you know, you need to discuss this stuff beforehand, and I think that Kyle and those guys do a lot of this about when we're in the heat of things, you know, if you're really scared, you need we need to take them, but it's interesting how
And hot shot crews, like you said,
they have it worked out.
They've been trained, and they've usually, like we just went over the new list and the higher list, and the guys that are coming onto this crew to fill vacancies have 7 or 8 or 9 years of experience where all that has been kind of worked out.
How much of that, John, is in the length of service now?
Length of service.
Yeah, it used to be we were hampered by people coming out of college and high school and only worked so long before they had to enroll and go to school.
Yeah, now there's such a pool out there vying for hot shot positions that they have to get many, many years in
Yeah.
either on
And then they staple on the
crews,
summer, the longer during the summer.
best of the best.
engines, helipack. They have to have that complete package before they can enter.
Do they still have kids
Compete.
coming in June and then leaving in the last of August to go back to school, or is that still the same prevalent?
There are a few,
Or
actually.
is it more of a career for those
I
guys?
think Helitack and the Type 2 crews have
Yeah.
more of that.
Most of the hot shot crews are year round unless there's an extenuating, preseason agreement of some sort.
But remember, we'd be decimated at the end of the season. Sometimes everybody'd be gone.
Pick up
Then
everybody.
you'd have to pick up
That's how
somebody like
some of us
John.
got hired.
Yeah.
Somebody off the trail crew or something.
That's how some
Remember
of us
John,
got
he
our
was there
jobs.
most of the summer, and he was just
Yeah.
a district flunky.
I was a wide-eyed cowboy. I got hired because I had cowboy boots on. Ed Sushi says, "We want those too." On Albion and I.
You went over.
What I saw you, John, was that there's a hoe. Nobody wanted to work on a hoe.
There's a whole story. I got every year I would get there, and I'd grab a Pulaski, and I'd just be up there, and the preacher just come up and hand me a hoe and take the Pulaski away from me.
We always want the biggest, hardest workers on the back of those hoes because that was the hardest, hardest job. We had 3 tools: a plastic, shovel, and an adze hoe. The only 3 that we used.
Also, remember we'd go out of region or something, and you'd always took your tools with because nobody else had hoes, and they'd ask you what the hell. And that was the other thing. We took our tools with us all the time. Now they don't take tools.
And I remember a preacher looking at me kind of funny, and he had this hole there. I might have done it 1 or 2 fire assignments, and I
Yeah, that
got
wasn't fair.
buddies with the Sawyer, so I became a swamper, and a
grew up
Sawyer
with a
the
saw.
next year I was a Sawyer, and I said, that's better than a hoe. Anything better than a hoe, so I kind of wormed my way out of that.
I worked behind a couple guys that didn't get dirty. Not to say names or anything, but it was kind of interesting.
But I think if after my daughter was on a national parks fire crew, and I think if I were doing it over again, I wanted to have not an easier time of it, but just where you're camped out most of the time, working 14 hours a day, and just enjoying the environment. Those national park crews.
Not quite in such a large fire environment.
Right,
Fire
they don't fight the fire.
thousands of people.
They just monitor the fire.
Yeah.
One of those monitoring groups.
Get to be resource advisor.
Exactly.